And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday or the special episode of Caff AI Chats with my guest, Corey Warfield. So, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let us know in the comments below where you're tuning in from. But by the way, I am just learning to get savvy with this. I'm still not anywhere near. So I'm not great at doing double duty. So if I don't respond back to you, or if I can't feature you above where you're from, I apologize. We will get with you in the comments after, but definitely let us know where you're from. We're so excited to have you here. For those of you that don't know, I'm in Houston, but I don't want to spend much time talking about myself. I would like to introduce Corey and allow him to do his own introduction. But I just want to share some tidbit of information or maybe some interesting facts about Corey and I. We actually have been connected since 2022. I think at the very beginning when we first connected, he was kind enough to welcome me into his world. I I engaged more in the comments below, and then we kind of just didn't really engage for quite some time until about a month ago, when we happened to have the opportunity to join a Zoom together, got to know each other in a different from a different perspective, learn where he is and what he's doing these days, share a little bit about myself, and then we got to meet live. So how many of us actually get to meet our LinkedIn, gurus, or those that we aspire to be like? Not very often. And I had the opportunity last week to meet Corey live in Phoenix, Arizona. But that's enough about my little tidbits of info. Instead, what I want to do is pass it on over to Corey so he can really truly do his own introduction, because I'm sure I do him a disservice. He's an amazing individual, and we're so excited that you're here. So thank you, Corey.
Well, thank you. First and foremostly, my name is Corey. I'm glad to meet anyone below that hasn't met me before. But Denise and I actually met on a Zoom call because LinkedIn recognized us both as top voices in their top voice program. And so those of us that had been bestowed that award were there. And I think, there were a couple people and some murmurings on both sides. Like, how do some people with so few followers have this top voice badge, and how do some people with so many followers, because a lot of the people with a lot of followers on LinkedIn kind of just put out garbage. And right, but so now I've got this big following on LinkedIn. Denise will have a huge following soon, but kind of falls into the former of the two categories. And so afterwards we just kind of reached out and we're like, wow, that's cool. And I was like, yeah, we were kind of talking about why we would have got these badges. And it turns out Denise is recognized by LinkedIn and her audience as being one of the top voices in the world in sales. And it's interesting when you look at the sales that she did in her career with technology. When we were talking, Denise, you still know some of that tech, like 20 years later, like the back of your hand. But, it is interesting. It feels like tech that you haven't sold. You're just starting to get into the, like the StreamYards and all of that, because I don't think you ever sold StreamYard. But so similarly to Denise being one of the top voices in sales, I've kind of emerged as one of the top voices in AI on the platform. And almost 10 years ago, I started my first tech company. We used machine learning and deep machine learning to help use data to make the restaurant scheduling both compliant and more efficient. And, so I've been in that world for quite some time as well, mostly on the founder side, sometimes on the advisory or the investor side as well. And I have my own project right now in generative AI. I've got a newsletter that's our stats show it is the fastest growing AI newsletter in the world. Fastest growing weekly AI newsletter in the world from the data that we've aggregated. But so it's just fun. And having this weekly newsletter and having to feature, 16 different tools a month and come up with 4 very relevant, timely, witty introductions that are typically, relatively long-winded, and then having to come up with different tutorials and different prompts, right, every week means that I have to be digging through the hundreds of new tools every week. So it's helped me really stay ahead of the curve on a lot of things. So, I'm a founder, I'm an influencer, I'm an influencer coach. I've created some of the bigger names on the platform that have done, hundreds of millions of inbound revenue on LinkedIn. And, other than that, I'm a startup guy. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at the Founder Institute. We just kicked off our most recent cohort last week. Been with them for almost a decade as well, and I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome. There's a wealth of information there that I actually want to dive a bit deeper on when we get to know you a bit more in the latter half of this. But I'd like to kick this off. Caff AI Chats was really created and just brought back as a means to talk about some of the AI in the news, because I think when most people, not you and I necessarily, but when most of us think of AI, we think of generative AI, and AI is so much more than just Chat GPT, as we know. And I think it's so important for us to really share with our audience what is truly happening beyond just Chat GPT. Because if we, I'm a firm believer, I am an AI enthusiast, but I do believe that if we are not knowledgeable and aware, we are not going to be engaged. And the less engaged we are, the more that we have a potential for AI to really do more bad than good. And so having these conversations, I think, really is what helps create this awareness, allows us to be more knowledgeable, and therefore allows us to be much more engaged, in hopes that we are affecting change, that we are part of that trajectory of AI, rather than allowing AI to just go off on its own, and that we're leveraging it for the good rather than just the bad. So I want to kick us off. Corey, you've got a newsletter. This is super timely because your newsletter goes out today. But maybe if you could share a topic that you think is important that we should be discussing amongst us all today. If you could kick us off, and then, if we've got time, I've got one as well. But I do want to, on the after our news, dive into a bit more about Corey himself. So thank you, Corey, if you could kick us off with that.
Absolutely, and thank you. So, a lot of people have seen Sora that just came out from OpenAI, effectively text to video, next generation from anything we've seen. It can make anything look incredibly real, even hyper real. And so we see things like 11 Labs replicating anyone's voice, right? And they just actually made that something that creators can monetize. But as we see technologies that can bring any of us to life digitally and put our voices to it, and potentially get us a bunch of artificial engagement on platforms with fake voices and videos of ourselves, it's really scary stuff. And we see a company out of Brazil where someone impersonated a CFO using AI, got the right people on a video call. The AI fooled them all, and they wired him $20 million, right? We just saw someone use AI to generate a fake driver's license, use that for a bunch of stuff, including stealing a bunch of crypto. And what I think people might not see coming is quantum computing and quantum AI, which is neither ones nor zeros. It's everything in between. It is unlimited potentiality. We're seeing some of the new agents like Multi-On that can do things like cancel subscriptions that you have, or delete new emails that you don't need, or use your credit card to book a reservation and pay for it. But so now we think about, if AI can create fake IDs, fake videos and voices, getting on voice calls, if it can access things like our social media and our credit cards, even without us wanting to, we can see very quickly how this could ruin lives and this could ruin humanity. And, Bill Gates recently said that he's not worried because technology can be the cure or the saving grace to technology. I'm totally with him on that. To me, the technology that keeps everything on the rails, and you've heard me say this live in front of an audience, is blockchain. I think everything that is generated by AI, not generative AI, but everything AI comes up with and outputs, needs to be recorded on an immutable ledger, a trustless ledger where we don't need to, hope or assume that people are doing the right thing, where things cannot be changed retroactively. We need these to be in such a manner where any technology that's trying to do this without that failsafe will be detected, will be shut down. You know, I get so, and I'm an optimist, but I get so scared and concerned about what can happen if we don't do that. And unfortunately, I'm still not hearing people talking about that, even at some of the, $100 billion companies, and, open AIs even, and stuff like that. Even Google, who has some incredible AI that they haven't released, publicly yet, but none of them are talking about minting it on chain. And they're talking about watermarks, but right, watermarks are something you can get around even if it's digitally embedded. So that's kind of my theme, and that's what I've been beating the drum on and screaming from the rooftops.
Well, and I think that's, no one wants to talk about the doom and gloom of AI, right? The reality is, though, there are some negative implications if we aren't actually actively embracing it with, I would say, caution, maybe not open arms, but if we're not effectively embracing it in some form or another, and actually, it's almost like that fear, out of sight, out of mind. If you don't ever touch it, if you don't ever have to manage to it, you think it's going to do, you don't have to worry about it. But the reality is, when we live in this out of sight, out of mind mentality, there is so much more that it can do that in which we see negative implications for, in which you just use some examples. You showed us some examples of that. But for those of us, because I think blockchain is really interesting, when I think of, or originally before you and I started to have conversations, I always associated blockchain with crypto. But it's not necessarily just crypto, right? So Corey, maybe you could share, I know you talked about it being trustless and it's this place, but maybe for those that have no idea what blockchain really is and they associate it primarily just with crypto, how would you describe blockchain in the most simple terms that someone else could understand?
Yeah, I think what's important to understand is that crypto is a thing. It's an asset. It's right. It's a thing. Blockchain is just a technology. Blockchain is not a thing. And blockchain is the technology that enabled crypto to become a thing. But there are at least 1,000 other use cases for blockchain right now that have zero to do with crypto. So I think people need to learn how to completely bifurcate the two. When they hear crypto, that's cryptocurrency. It's an alternative to fiat currency. It's a digital store of some type of wealth, often not backed by anything, but that's crypto. It's just short for cryptocurrency. Blockchain has nothing to do with crypto except for that it's a technology that empowers it. It wouldn't be possible without it. So what is blockchain? It's a digital record of anything that's happened that has been recorded on the chain. And typically there's a smart contract associated with it. It's immutable. You cannot go back and change it. It's typically distributed or double blind, meaning there's two records in places that could have no way of knowing where the other one is. So in order for anything to be validated and moved forward on the chain to add to that record that again can't be changed, two people in two parts of the world that would have zero way to know who the other one is because it's completely randomized, right? That's the only way that you can build onto that knowledge base. And you can always look back and see every transaction, every entry onto that ledger. And so we could see any video and it would be tied back to ChatGPT, Google, Gemini, Perplexity, whatever it might be. And we could even see what prompt was used, who prompted it, right? What computer device did they do it on? What led up to that point? Because there's so many ways to jailbreak AI, right? On chain would be how did they get it to do this thing it's not supposed to do? Or on chain with smart contracts, it wouldn't let it do anything it's not supposed to do. And so you have this kind of chain of command. Um, as I've been saying, fiat currency is often not backed by anything. That's a moot point in this conversation. That's the people that say Fort Knox has no gold in it, and there's probably some validity or truth to that or not, and most of us will never know because we'll never get in there. Um, but I do see cryptos that are backing themselves with gold and with diamond and things of that nature, which I think is very, very powerful. But yeah, again, to get back, I think we just need to understand that there's a complete delineation between crypto and blockchain.
When I think of, and we won't beat this, we won't beat this as a dead horse now at this point, but just to maybe summarize, if I think of in terms of blockchain, and you mentioned a digital contract, in essence, what it is to me is like a black box. It is recording everything that is transpiring. And the difference between this or the blockchain and the black box versus a flat contract that you have between two parties that you sign. If you go back, I mean, you and I both been in sales, Corey, and sometimes finding that original contract that two parties put together can sometimes be difficult. And then when you find it, actually sifting through and determining whether someone is in compliant or not in compliant sometimes can be a bit tedious. And not everyone even reads those contracts. With the blockchain, you don't have to have that.
And do both parties have the same original contract, or has one of them been manipulated? Because you
Correct.
can go through, there's no digital hygiene. You can effectively digitally white out or re-render, or right, there's so many ways now. People are digitally signing things, e-signing them without their real signatures. It's just a very, generic digital signature. So there are so many ways to manipulate something like that because it's not on chain. But
Exactly.
once we chain everything, and we can be blockchain agnostic. Blockchains do not need to be overtly carbon intensive. They're actually carbon neutral and carbon positive blockchains. But we can be agnostic as long as the chain will exist, for the foreseeable future. But we need that digital record. We need to know what AI is doing. We need to know what it can and cannot do. We need to put checks and balances on it in a way that we're not relying on government or executives behind closed board doors and stuff like that.
Well, and I love, because I believe, like you, especially now that I'm a bit more educated, and I am by far not educated enough. I still need to go back and do some more of my own research. But if you think about how we do business today, we should be very transparent when we're leveraging, especially AI technologies. And the way to do that is to leverage blockchain. But what I find interesting, Corey, you shared a story in which you were engaging in conversation with someone that was a C-level individual at a very large organization that had no concept of leveraging blockchain. And so maybe you can share that, because I think that therein is telling that we still have a lot of work to do to get to a point in which we are ethically leveraging AI in a way that is responsible to our consumers and those around us.
Well, this story is public domain, and we have internets, or rather, we have videos on many of our various internet channels at Interesting Engineering. So over 1 million people have now seen either parts of our whole video. But so that individual's name is Cedric Nike. He's one of the global CEOs and board members at Siemens, $140 billion market cap company. So right, he's as senior as it gets. It's one of the most legacied and higher valuation companies in the world, doing a lot of visionary, cool stuff. I'm actually blown away by what Siemens is doing, and they just announced their industrial metaverse, and there were 1,000 people on the edge of their seats, myself included, and it was super cool. And afterwards, their team and my team got together, and we went back to this kind of secure location, and I was able to interview him for some time. And I started off Corey being Corey, but after just a minute, I said, you know, myself coming from kind of the Web3 metaverse world and having built stuff in 3D and kind of skating to where the puck is going, I have to imagine when I hear metaverse that you're building this on chain, and you're thinking about tokenizing it. And again, tokens don't need to mean cryptocurrency, but they can. Crypto is a token. But so I said, right, I have to imagine you're building this on chain with tokens. And he thought for just a moment, and this is on camera, and he said, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. I guess we probably are going to need to tokenize and think about blockchain. But they're talking about doing things like cancer research and building military grade vehicles and weaponry, all using this industrial metaverse. And to think that we wouldn't know kind of how people got there, or when you stress test things in the physical world, how does it really translate to the physical world? We need smart contracts. We need things that become checks and balances in real life. And so I was really glad that he seemed so receptive to that concept. But at the same time, I mean, they have phenomenal think tanks and executive leadership and brilliant, brilliant engineers and technologists and futurists on their team of tens of thousands of worldwide employees or more. And for that not to have been, just,
Top of mind.
yeah. And, to take it in a different step, generative AI is phenomenal, but it's said to have the capability of reaching IQs in the millions. And even if we say that's a gross, exaggeration, and that they may only reach an IQ of 10,000, that's I mean, the human IQ is around 100, right? 140, 160 is like, Einstein level. And
Yeah.
so to think of robots now, and we're able to 3D print organs that human bodies will not reject. Now we think about they're 3D printing human brains, although they don't necessarily know what that means. You think about bulletproof, stronger than steel robots, right? Androids, humanoids, with 3D printed organs in them. and superhuman intelligence with IQs into the thousands. And now we're seeing some of these being able to do things like fly, right? And some of these materials, Google DeepMind has created the potential for 250,000 new materials, some of which can give unlimited power. Others are harder than anything on Earth. But so we think about these being able to fly and being bulletproof and having human intelligence and organs that enable them to keep going, and potentially with materials that generate unlimited energy. And if we don't have checks and balances on what they can and can't do, and if we don't know what each one of these is doing and even thinking at any given time, then it's really hard for we humans to stay ahead of that curve. Probably impossible mathematically. But if
Yes.
everything's on chain, and if everything is with smart contracts, and if we're able to really put these guardrails in place, we have very little to worry about. And so I think it's existential. I think it's of the utmost importance, but I do think that this is a viable solution.
Well, and I think this is a really important topic that if you don't know enough about blockchain, you can always follow Corey. And we'll talk about how to connect with him at the end, but really do some homework on this because I don't think this is just the wave of the future. This is a necessity for us to implement so that we ensure that as individuals and as part of organizations, that we are holding ourselves accountable and that we have a means with which to allow others to hold us accountable as well. Because the reality is we've got to stay ahead, and we're not going to be ahead of the curve. So I was about to make a statement that can't ever be true at this point, but I do think we need to try to get as close to ahead as possible, at least be in the rat race along with the AI technologies as they're being released. But let's move away from blockchain because not everyone loves the idea, nor are they super excited about, or they're just not educated enough to fully grasp. Let's talk about some fun stuff in AI. I mean, you have an amazing background. You didn't actually even start with AI. So maybe before we move on to another AI topic, let's really understand a little bit more about you because you and I have I wouldn't say an interesting background together, but we both have been in the restaurant industry before, and you have an interesting beginning where you started and how you've gotten here, which I think is inspirational to us all. And so if you could share a little bit about that, and then I think it'll really navigate us towards our next quick topic on AI.
Perfect. I'll be super quick. But yeah, at 16 years old, I became a waiter and a bartender at the prestigious Kellogg Business School at Northwestern at the Allen Center. And back then, in the mid 90s, at least in the county of Cook, all you needed to do is be 16 with a license to work. And if you weren't taking money for alcohol, you could serve it. And so I learned everything about making cocktails and wine and service, and did that for a while. Went to college, hated it, and dropped out. I dropped out because I became a computer software program or engineer tester. I was an alpha, then a beta tester. Now I was building websites and things like that on my own with Angel Fire and GeoCities, but right, all those years ago, it was all kind of new, and I loved testing software, and I did that for a while. And the project terminated. We were building one of the world's first online encyclopedias and atlases, and I was able to go from that as a 19-year-old college dropout to become a metrologist, which is the science of weights and measures. And so I became a metrologist at a pharmaceutical research company. Loved that for a bit, got slightly burnt out on it, right? And so I pursued a music career. And I went, on kind of a self tour. I had music that I'd recorded, and I went around the country performing it and selling, my recorded music. But I thought I was going to make it as a musician. And so I kind of abandoned my waiter and bartender roots and my very short time in corporate, and pursued this career, and it didn't work. And so a year or so later, I found myself living on the streets out of a car, like all of that stuff. And I remembered, hey, I was pretty good at restaurants. So, at 20 years old, I went back into restaurants, and I ended up spending almost 20 years in restaurants. And I ran restaurants around the country, and, I became certified as a sommelier. So I was able to work at some of the finer restaurants around the country, including in Houston, Texas. I worked at Brenner's. I worked at the old San Francisco Steakhouse. I worked at Houston's. And so I spent most of my adulthood working in restaurants. No real professional experience, no degree, rubbing shoulders with, all the billionaires and all the celebrities I grew up looking up to. But I got sick of being a servant in the castle. And more so, I got really frustrated that restaurants aren't run properly or adequately when
Mhm.
all the data existed to run them perfectly. So, I kind of caught the entrepreneurial bug. I started to study data analytics, things of that nature. Was able to bootstrap a company that we got to market. And then ultimately, we raised quite a bit of money for it. And we were able to get national scale for that software company. Again, for those just joining, it was in the machine and deep machine learning space, which kind of is part and parcel with AI. So
Right.
10 years now as an entrepreneur, scaling companies and getting companies funding, starting my own companies. I have my own AI company in the music space right now, but it's been an interesting ride for sure.
Well, thank you for actually being vulnerable and sharing parts that sometimes could be scary to share with others. I think that that story altogether, whether you take the bits and pieces, every piece of that story, and then all together, sorry, are really what I think is so inspirational. So to sum that up, you came from not a technical background. You started out in the restaurant world. You then were able to break free and go on this music tour, as we want to call it, right? And then you hit some hard times and realized that that wasn't going to work. And, it was really they were some really hard times, but then you picked yourself back up, you got back into the restaurant world, and then you went back to this entrepreneurial, not that show business is necessarily deemed as entrepreneurial, but it is, right? You kind of went out on your own. So then you decided, to go back out on your own, leverage what you had experienced in a little bit of the tech world prior to, before the restaurant, during the restaurant world before you hit 20, and leveraging your restaurant experience to launch, a solution that could really help make a positive impact in the restaurant space. And then you've expanded from there. And it's pretty amazing because now you have one of the leading and fastest growing AI newsletters. You've got your hands, as you mentioned, in multiple different AI ventures and tech ventures. You're in crypto. You talk about the importance of blockchain. I mean, it's an amazing journey that you've been on, and one that oh, yes.
I'm not in crypto. I can't stand it. I don't get it. I think
Okay.
soon there will be a use case. I think decentralized currency, digital currency is absolutely important. But when I see stuff happening at, FTX and things like that, and all the rug pulls and all the wallets and how frustrating they are, I've probably lost at least $50,000 worth of crypto with wallets I
Wow.
can't access, or companies that ended up just crashing and burning because they didn't dox their executives and they had no clue what they were doing, and they put all the real money in their pockets. And I think that's the Wild West. My partner at the Launchpad I co-founded is a big, they call themselves degens for degenerates, but I have a lot of friends in crypto. I have some good friends that have made many millions, and I'm connected to the largest Bitcoin holder in the world, who I admire quite a bit. But I myself, although I hold a lot of crypto, I'm over it. You know what I mean? It's not there yet. In my mind, it's not ready for adoption.
I like that because I have not adopted it. So I'm glad that you say that, because then I'm not really behind the times. I'm actually probably in the right space until they improve over what they're doing today, so that adoption may be easier and that we may actually see some success with it. So thanks for, one, qualifying that, and two, educating us a bit more on that space. I'm sure, and in fact, I know a couple of people that are out listening in the audience that would probably beg to differ with you or have an argument, but to each their own as it relates to crypto. But moving on to, we don't have a whole lot of time left. What do you think is the most exciting technology that you're seeing right now? You and I briefly talked about, Gemini and some things you can do there, but what do you think is the most exciting right now in this very moment that you would like to make sure that everyone knows about, or that if we don't know about, you give us enough that we can go out and learn some more about it?
Well, for those that haven't used AI, you have to. It's really easy. You ask it how to use itself. Feel free to play with any of the free ones, whether it's Pi, that was started by LinkedIn's co-founder Reid Hoffman, which is really easy to use, or Perplexity, which is kind of the first real AI-powered way to surf the internet. Really, really great. Or ChatGPT obviously is a great one. The one I'm loving right now is Google Gemini, which was called Bard. Their best version is called Advanced, and you can get free access to it by signing up for a free trial to Google One. And so, what I'm using these for is, as a non technical tech co founder, I'm using ChatGPT to write a bunch of code, mostly in Python, but some other repositories. And, having it explain to me why it's writing in which languages, have it explain to me how to create the right environments, how to, effectively make the code work, then taking these, getting them set up in environments, but then putting the code into other AI. So I'll have ChatGPT code something for me. I'll then put it into Gemini and I'll have it kind of debug it, and I'll ask it, what could be improved, and what the fallacies are. And going back and forth, I've been able to build several softwares already. Very, very quickly for little to no money. I hear people like Sam Altman say soon 10-person companies will be worth $1 billion, and then single person companies can become multi-billion-dollar companies. That's where I see all this technology going. So I can make a beautiful website with AI for free in half an hour. I can make software within days, right? And it's not just me. I just got very good at prompting AI, and again, I play with all the tools, so I know what's out there, which is a competitive advantage. But yeah, right now using Gemini to kind of take things from any of the other AIs to the next level has been a game changer.
I can't imagine coding anything, but you have a little bit of a coding background. It'd be cool though to attempt it to see what the solutions Gemini and ChatGPT together could do. I'm excited to go out and test it myself. So I'm going to sign up for a trial version. I'm going to come to you if I need some help with it. But I think we're in some exciting times right now. AI can do so much. If you look at the advancements that we've had as it relates to healthcare and how we're able to print, specifically in healthcare at CES, I think it was the heart that will enable you to replicate someone else's heart and actually do surgery on it.
And
So
and lungs, and they've actually 3D printed lungs that the human body has accepted and not rejected. There are humans that have artificially 3D printed organs right now.
that is amazing to me. And that's not just the future. I mean, this is the here and the now, and it's so exciting. But as we talked about, it is important that we are aware, knowledgeable, because there are some negative implications of leveraging AI or allowing AI to just go on its own. As we know that it's going to become billions of times smarter than we are. And, there are technologies out there that are being developed that could put us in a place in which it might be a bit more scary than we would like. But that being said, it's an opportunity for us to differentiate ourselves by leveraging AI to really have some fun with it and look for the positives, the AI for good that we're seeing out there in this world. Corey, AI is one part of what you do. You mentioned also that you help influencers. I want people to really get to know how they can work with you or engage with you. So maybe share a little bit about, you've got AI businesses, you are invested in other companies, you sit on boards, you do a multitude of various different things. But the one that those of us on LinkedIn are here listening to, that are listening to you, what do you think would be the most exciting that you do that you could help the LinkedIn users of today?
Well, thank you for that. And I'm excited. I think today or tomorrow is going to be the 15th person that I've coached to break 100,000 followers. So I work with people one on one. Shout out Sean Nason. But that want to build a huge following with an optimized profile, going viral routinely. And I'm not as excited by vanity metrics, things like our top voice badge. That I'm very proud of, because that's merit. But Joy, I barely care that I have 500,000 followers unless they make me money, and thank God they do, right? And so that's what I work with people on. How do we get big followings? How do we go viral? How do we optimize your profile? But most importantly, how do we use that to fill pipelines with inbound leads? How do we then make sure that we're vetting and qualifying those so that we can convert, then fine tune kind of that conversion percentage, and have it all happen on LinkedIn? And so I will be launching a group cohort probably in the next 6 months. Probably in a similar time frame, I'll be launching an AI powered avatar of myself, a virtual coach, that will be very good. That's why it hasn't been launched yet, although it exists, but it will be very good. That said, I don't think an avatar of me or even a group session or a cohort with me can effectuate what I can do one-on-one with people. That's where I can stamp my name and say, it might take us 3 months, which Nora Agbakuman in Nigeria got 100,000 followers in 3 months with me. It might take us a year and a half, like it has with Sean Nason. But my goal is to see everyone that I coach have 6-figure followings, 100 million plus views, and use that to be able to bring in more than $1 million of inbound revenue. And there's a lot of validation behind that. There's over 100 recommendations at the bottom of my LinkedIn profile. People can look at my content; it goes viral virtually every day. Although yesterday was anomalous. Yesterday, I think I'm only about 97 likes. So if anyone's watching this and wants to help my ego today, go and give me a like on yesterday's post. And I'm really being facetious. Yeah, I love working with people one-on-one. I only take on a couple people at any given time. I actually had to tell someone no. Was it this week? Late last week, I had to tell someone no because they're trying to do exactly what you do, Denise. And it's like, no, right? There's not going to be 2 of those people in my community or that are blowing up on LinkedIn. So, I wish them all the best. But yeah.
Well, and I can attest to, because Corey has been so kind to work with me, and we just started our journey. But even in the short amount of time that we've worked together, I can attest to his being really invested in your success. And he doesn't believe in the vanity metrics. What he does believe in is getting your voice out there, and he's the best at doing that. So he will teach you how to do it. He'll push you out of your comfort zone. He'll kind of make you think outside of the box, and he'll help you to adopt new strategies that you might not quite feel so truly comfortable with just yet, but that you're going to be there when you see the results, right? So that's coming from a true testimonial of myself. But I appreciate the time that you've given us, Corey, on this session today. The goal is always to talk about how valuable and important AI is in the current news, but it's also important for us to get to know those that we engage with on a regular basis. And Corey, just engaging with you has been amazing. So we appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you're doing with me. I would tell you, anyone who's listening, to make sure that you go and follow Corey. Not only is he amazing and knowledgeable as it relates to AI and new technologies, but he's got a position in where he stands as it relates to blockchain, and he can help you really get your voice out and start bringing in the revenue that meets all of your goals and expectations. So again, thank you, Corey, for joining us. For those that are here today, normally we have Caff AI, geez, it's a tongue twister, Caff AI Chats on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday. So stay tuned for next week's session, same time, same place. And this was a awesome special episode. Thanks again, Corey. Thank you to everyone who is out there. Drop us a note. We'll try to go back and respond to them. Check out Corey's posts, and just watch how things change for me as well working with Corey. I'll be a true testimonial, and he's got a lot of them out there. So go check out some of the people he's worked with, and you'll know for sure that he can help make a difference in anyone's LinkedIn profile, and where there in turn will be anyone's business. So thank you, Corey.
Thank you so much, Denise. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I had a blast.
Thank you. All right. So now I'm a little technically challenged as I get my...
We're still